Hello, and welcome to the Student Climate Action Council May meeting. We're going to start with some introductions. Raj, go ahead.
Hi, everyone. I'm Raj Awasthi. I'm a freshman at Montgomery Blair High School, and I'm a representative for the DCC area.
Hello, my name is Celestia. I am a junior at Rockville High School, and I am a representative for the Central area.
Hi, my name is Peter Boyko. I'm a sophomore at Northwest High School, and I represent the Lower North region.
Hello, my name is Megan Stallard. I'm a freshman at Poolsville High School, and I'm an at-large council member.
Hi, my name is Quinley Borden. I'm a freshman at Richard Montgomery High School, and I'm also an at-large council member.
Hello, my name is Cindy Vigari. I am a sophomore at Clarksburg High School, and I am a council member for the Upper North area. With us, we also have Walter Shaw, a sophomore at Richard Montgomery High School. He is a representative for the Central area.
Okay, and now we're going to start with our budget updates with Mrs. Eder, who is one of our financial advisors.
All right, so we discussed this via email, and we just want to kind of update everybody if you're not in grants and get some updates on the process. So we talked about doing school reimbursements where schools would spend the money themselves and then apply for reimbursement. So have those been sent out, like the notifications, or do we still need to send those out?
Yes, the notifications went out, on April 26th. They were sent out to 6 of the schools that were awarded. There was a 7th award that you all had approved. However, that grant for the compostology course was funded by the MSDE. So we held that money back after speaking to our MCPS folks, Mr. Mayor. In total, we granted $12,900. Right now, I got permission for them to, since we gave the awards a little bit later in the game, I asked for permission through our office to extend, past the deadlines that we currently have that recently went out to schools. So they have till mid-June to submit. I did get one submission today from Redland Middle School, so it hasn't been expended yet, but they are coming in, and I plan on sending reminders on the process out tomorrow to the awarded schools. So I'm really excited to get those done. One
follow-up, would it be helpful if we message them, because we have contact with some of them via email or via Slack, or would you like us to remind them?
100%, that would be great. What I can do is send out the reminders and copy you all tomorrow, so you'll know to follow up with those schools if that works for you.
Awesome. So before we discuss the operating budget, our kind of idea around that, does any council members have any questions around the grant reimbursement process? Okay. So the other thing we wanted to talk about is the potential, this is mainly for next year's council, of developing an operating budget. Is that something we could do where we kind of sector it out into different, one of which being grants, but also meeting expenses or running an event or something of that nature?
Yeah, I think we had a little bit of that conversation via email, like you said. Unfortunately, this money is for grants, which has strict guidelines, and in the current structure that it is now, it is stated, to support schools through the application process for the grant, and it is strictly for the initiatives for schools to move forward in getting their green school status. Okay, what I would recommend that you do is write up a proposal to ask for the funds I would need. And this would be something that I could bring to my department and to see if there's any, leeway for next year. But come up with a budget, a proposal with detailed items on what the funds would be used for. Stay away from food and those kind of things, but directly connect it to the initiatives. I can see, I can propose it and bring it to our folks and see if there's any, room for that. Because you all had some great ideas, and I'd like to, be able to bring that forward and try to at least have it be heard and considered.
Awesome. I guess one other thing would it be possible, so we awarded just over $12,000 in this year's grants. Would it be possible to somehow salvage the remainder of that for next year's grants, or does that, I think we were aware that like on June 30th, because of the fiscal year, it would,
Yeah, so the money that's not used will be reabsorbed into the budget. But if hopefully we can plan a really good year next year, and this is how we learn, right? So we learn the process, and we're more proactive and work as a team and get it done and spend all that money next year. Okay.
All right. And so this also kind of ties into the operating budget, but this would be something, I'm not sure if there's any other constrictions around it, but if we were to hold like an event for students to kind of showcase projects, would that be a separate category that we could work into a proposal in an operating budget?
Yeah, I would put that into that proposal that I spoke of, especially if it's directly connected to the granted schools that win, like an end-of-year showcase, so that they can do exactly that, what they have done. Put that in your proposal. I think that would be a great connection.
Awesome. So does any other members have any comments around grants or operating budget or anything of that sort?
Oh, I just had a couple of things, and these are just clarifying questions. When you said my first question is, when you said it's being reabsorbed, that money is like, it's not being wasted, but going back into the next budget cycle for MCPS?
So this was the first year it was granted, and it came out of the K-12 budget, which is the operating fund. So yes, it will be reabsorbed into the current freeze and to kind of recoup the losses that we've had throughout the year.
Okay.
Because it did come out of the operating K through 12 budget.
Okay. And then for the reimbursements program, that's just schools spend their school's money on their projects, and then we reimburse them through the grants program. Is that correct?
That is correct. So typically, we would give them the money, but because we were kind of late in the game and we had deadlines that had already passed for spending, some of the schools had been given the okay, and they spent that money. So now they are going through, and they're very familiar with the process because they do it throughout the year. Ideally, they would have the money, spend it, and I would be monitoring that. But now they're asking for reimbursement for the projects that they were approved for, so that we reimburse them for what they spent, already.
Yeah, and I understand that we can like track all the spending, correct?
Absolutely.
Okay.
What I wanted to, real quick, just make a suggestion. I'd like to share a Google Drive so that I could put the budget information in there so that you all have access to it. And it will be what each school, what each school was awarded and what as the expenses come in and reimbursements happen.
That would be very, very helpful. And for just one more question regarding the reimbursements, how would we know like when to reimburse them?
So the process is, there's a MCPS form that they submit with the receipts and invoice.
Okay.
They send it to me right now currently, and I fill out the account information that should be reimbursed. They should be reimbursed from, and the money goes directly to their checking account, and they get noticed from our accounts payable.
Okay. Wow. Okay, perfect. Thank you.
All right, do we have any other members with questions around budget or grants related topics? All right, well, I think that does it. Thank you so much for joining us, Ms. Eder.
Absolutely, thank you. Good work.
Thank you. Okay. Now we are ahead of schedule for once. So we're going to start our climate resolution and our climate action plan discussion. So Mr. Gordon, and I believe Ms. Snyder was also scheduled for this, but I don't think she's here yet. That's totally fine. So I think we need to give him a mic, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, or unless he wants to join us up
here. Oh, do you want to join us up here? Great, thank you. Okay. So I think what we need to start with is just how to make this happen, because we want to create a climate change action plan similar to the one that Prince George's County has implemented. So what are the steps? Like, how can we, and then I guess the second thing is, how can we support that process and how can we be involved with that process? Because I think this is something that we really want to focus on, especially next year.
Yeah, no, I think that that's something that I've been advocating for a while within the school system, because I think that we've got a lot of actually sustainability actions happening within the district right now, but there doesn't seem to be any kind of overarching plan with it. And I think that this climate change action plan would help give us a little bit of guidance with it. Have you guys talked to anyone in Prince George's County about how they went about it yet? I don't want to go over stuff. Okay, so from what I understand happened there, it was a bunch of parents came to the school board there and said, "Hey, school board, we think that we need this climate change action plan," and the school board said, "Okay, go do one." And so I guess our first step would probably be getting some kind of authorization or whatever you want to call it from the school board to say, hey, we want you guys to create this climate change action plan. Then they formed a committee, and I'm not sure, they had like students, they had teachers, they had community members within that community, within that committee. That committee then met, I believe, every month or so, and they would invite in experts in whichever area they were discussing. And then they, so they discuss, transportation, they discuss buildings, they discuss, energy usage at each of those. And I think that they must have had 10 meetings or so on various subjects. And then they kind of took each of those general sections and came up with recommendations for that, and created the 100-page document that had kind of, this is what needs to be done. This is kind of the timeline that we're looking at with it. These are going to be the players within creating that. The one piece of advice that they said was that it would be get a consultant to write the report, like after all these meetings, because it just kind of fell on parents essentially to have to put it together, and it was a pretty big ask. So that was their one recommendation for when we do one. So.
Okay, I guess I'm wondering, like, how involved could the Student Climate Action Council be with this? Could we write the report ourselves? Because I think for us, it's about doing the legwork and making sure that we're as involved as we possibly can be with what comes out of this report. So could we write it? And then, I mean, the way that I've heard it stated before, it would be like a committee that's put together. So could the Student Climate Action Council be a member of the committee, like as a whole, all of us?
That is a good question. My slight hesitation with that is that the more people you have involved, the more difficult it is to be able to get anything to move forward. So one idea might be like, maybe, some of you have a much higher interest in transportation. Some of you have a much higher interest in, food waste and all that. And so then maybe, you can each take one of those sections and work with, other people on each of those sections. And then have, one person kind of in charge of everything and all kind of talking. I just get a little bit, working with a lot of groups, that the more people you have discussing something, the longer those discussions kind of take, which is a good thing, but you have to find that balance. And where I think that the Climate Action Council can come into play is, again, I think that we do need like the school board approval, maybe approval is the wrong word, but I think that we need a request to create this plan from the school board, so that we don't just create this plan and then they're like, okay, that's nice, and toss it into the garbage or something, because they have nothing invested in it. So I think that we do need that buy-in from the school board and from the rest of the district to do it.
I'm actually really glad you said that, because we're gonna talk about like a possible resolution, and Lynn, I'm gonna need your help and some advice on this, but that's gonna be later. And what I was thinking, just kind of going off of what you were saying, like we could have like during these committee meetings, I guess, like pre-registered seats where 1, 2, or 3 SCAC representatives can go to these meetings and share input or whatever, and then report back. And like you said, it can be based on interest, whether that's transportation or whatever. So I think that's one idea, and I agree. But I don't know if any other council members had anything else to add.
I definitely agree. The other thing to note with that is that it would really be our policy committee probably focusing on that, and not everyone is in the policy committee, so that would lower the number. Policy committee attends those meetings and then brings it back to the policy climate ambassadors, who could then help us with writing that section of the report from whatever took place that month. Okay, technical difficulties.
I have a question, this could go to Mr. Gordon. Do you know how, I don't believe in Prince George's County, they had a sustainability policy or a climate policy when the climate action plan came forward. Well, I could be wrong. And I think one of the things we want to understand is what is the juxtaposition of the climate action plan with the MCPS sustainability policy, and how do those two relate, integrate, augment one another, and looking as well, if you look at the format you're thinking about, a resolution usually comes forward with whether it actually is acted on or not, which is another issue with some Board of Education resolutions, but it is like an action, like a command, resolve that X, Y, or Z will happen, sometimes with like a timeline built in by a certain date. And so you want to think through those pieces of it as well, or is the content of the plan that you all are contemplating and working on something that would go through the policy committee to be added to the sustainability policy? So just some things to kind of think about in both the form and the purpose or the outcome. You know, is it just an aspirational document or is it actual actions?
From what I understand, the way that I kind of interpret everything, I see the MCPS sustainability policy as kind of the overarching doctrine, that these are MCPS's goals. But in it, there isn't much saying, how are we going to reach these goals kind of thing. It's just saying, hey, we want to, meet Montgomery County's, energy goals or greenhouse gas reduction goals. And that's great, but there's nothing in there that really specifically says, okay, we are going to do this, we're going to do this, we're going to do this. And that's where the climate change action plan, I see, comes into it. And it has very kind of specific actions within it that says, let's do this part for this. So I think that that's where those two interact. I'm not really sure how it will interact with the resolution, other than, maybe the resolution puts some, teeth into it, potentially. That's saying, hey, we are going to commit to doing this, which the sustainability policy kind of does. The action plan may not do as much. That just says, this is what we recommend doing to achieve these goals. And maybe the other thing can actually say, okay, and this is when we're going to do it, and this will happen if we don't manage to do it.
Okay, that's great. I'm wondering if there's a way that we can make it so that the climate change action plan itself is more of like a set in stone, like we must do this type of thing. Because from what I've seen, that seems to be the best way to actually hold the county accountable for it. So is there a way that we could do that? Would we just pass the climate change action plan with the school board after we write it? Is that the way to do it? Like pass a resolution creating the group to create the plan, and then pass another resolution with the plan in it. I'm looking at you, Lynn.
Well, I am not one to add bureaucracy and steps to things. I think, the most efficient way is usually the best way. Sitting and thinking, what I would suggest, what I think might be a good way forward would be for, if the Student Climate Action Council wants to take the lead on creating a climate action plan for Montgomery County Public Schools, to do your homework and research looking what they've done in Prince George's County. I think a year ago or so, I sent you all a link to the work that the students did in Salt Lake City Public Schools. Look at some exemplars. That doesn't mean you have to follow them, but it's always easier to start with something in front of you than trying to create something absolutely from scratch. And come up, make sure you've got the sustainability policy as your guide, and come up with a draft that you think makes sense. You want to. You probably want to also talk with folks in, like in Mr. Traubman's office, to see what's, so if you look at, for instance, the Salt Lake City Climate Action Plan, if you look at the Prince George's County Climate Action Plan, I think you'd see a lot of the things that are in there are things that MCPS is doing. And so you want to think about how you want to address the things that are already occurring. Do you want to list those out and acknowledge them, and then, but in a sense, you're holding those items, those actions up for scrutiny. You want to hold the system accountable to not only what they've started to do, but will continue to do. So think about that. And if you want to come up with a draft, and then once you have a form that you are comfortable with, once you have content that you're comfortable with, then I think comes a time to decide what's the best form to move that forward. Typically, a resolution has to come from the board. It doesn't come from somebody outside the board. It comes from the board. So if you want a resolution to come forward, then you would need to work with a board member to craft and move your resolution forward, get it to the other members of the Board of Education for their review and ideally agreement. Or if you want to, there's other forms it could possibly take, but if you do want the resolution form, you will have to work with a board member to get that to the board table onto an agenda, as an agenda item for action. But if the Student Climate Action Council wanted to present in conjunction with like the sustainability folks a climate action plan and present that to the board for approval, that's another way forward. Because if you've ever watched a board meeting, tune in on Thursday, 14 hours of fun. You'll see a lot of things come to the board for approval. They come through the system, and whether it's a procurement item or a recommendation on how we're going to handle absenteeism or a curriculum, whatever it is, it comes to the board, and the board simply approves it. And so that's another way to get something of substance, official.
I think the way I look at it is that you already have the board approval, right? Like, to Sebastian's point is or Mr. Gordon's point, there's an existing document that says we're going to meet, reduction of greenhouse gases, right? And all of those, right? You have the overarching thing that you need to meet. What I've noticed is that and it's rightfully so, we're missing a strategic plan of what are the steps to get there. And I think what needs to happen is you almost need to look at the policy ECA, and point out, like, all right, greenhouse gases, all right, so What are the ways in which MCPS is already doing it? And then what are the other things that are missing or need to be added, or things that are in the pipeline that need to be added to it? And I think a lot of this, to Ms. Harris's point, there's a lot of stuff is already out there happening or being planned. It's just not well documented. And I think to Mr. Gordon's point, one thing that, before he even said it, I was thinking a consultant would be very helpful to capturing some of this stuff, because I think they also know what works in other systems and can bring that in. If you look at the climate action plan for the county, it's much more detailed of how to get there, and they connect it to those things, and that was done by a consultant. So I would look at it more as a strategic plan, I guess.
You know, and I just had another thought in the conversation. So one thing to think about too is the Board of Education has a strategic plan, and it's reviewed, revised every 3 years. And the current strategic plan is up for review and this year. And so one thing to consider is, do we want to create a climate piece of the Board of Education's strategic plan? I'm just thinking and talking, but that's another opportunity given the timing.
Can you walk me through what like the strategic plan looks like and how you like envision a climate part of the plan to be?
Yeah, I mean, you can see it on the MCPS website, and basically right now there are 3 things. There's like math and literacy, two-way communication and family engagement, and retaining of high-quality staff, and operational excellence. And in my mind, you know, when I was on the strategic planning committee, I still am, when we finalized the current strategic plan, and not that it can be fine-tuned a little bit year to year, but one of the things that we kind of talked about was less is more in the strategic plan. But just because right now it's organized in kind of 3 broad pillars doesn't mean that that's what it has to stay that way. And I do think there might be room for, I mean, and I'm just putting this out there, operational excellence is part of the strategic plan. And, you know, as, you know, operational excellence to me includes becoming a net zero school system. And so there could be that pillar that gets to the work of the school system, thinking about, because if the more progress we make toward our climate goals, it's going to save the school system money, so it makes good economic sense. It's good stewardship. So not only are we teaching our students and we're helping them to become climate warriors, but we're modeling that behavior in the way we operate our school system, and those kinds of things matter. And so, you know, it could. I think there are very, very strategic ways that we could build into the strategic plan, kind of these climate goals as part of, you know, overall operational excellence of the system. So that's something to think about.
I was going to ask, if we wanted to have a consultant, wouldn't that require MCPS to approve a part of their like budget to be allocated towards a consultant, or how would that work? Oh, for the climate action plan, because I know it was discussed, and didn't like PG County say that they recommended having a consultant? I was just wondering how that would work.
You could get a grant. The Student Climate Action Council could get a grant and use some of those funds for a consultant.
And then I'm looking at the strategic plan right now, and I have a couple things. So there are 3 pillars: academic excellence, family engagement, and then operational excellence. I don't know if we necessarily need to like add a whole new pillar, but I think what you were saying with adding like climate and sustainability under operational excellence, because I'm also seeing on the website there are like sub pillars as well. So having one of those be on that topic. And then also it says like the strategic plan goes from 2022 to 2025, is that like, do you still revise it or like look at it every year, even though it's from that time period? Okay.
Plan.
Sorry, can you say
A
that?
strategic climate action plan.
Yeah.
Anyway.
And then I also wanted to clarify a few points going back to what we were talking, and feel free to correct me if I'm wrong, but how I see all of this panning out is the first step is a resolution which would create a group of community stakeholders that works on a climate action plan, because I know people have done, like Hannah Oluni did this with school meals. Hannah Oluni was a former SMOB. She passed a resolution creating a focus group for school meals. I think we could do something similar to that to create a focus group of, like I said, community stakeholders to work on the climate action plan. And then going back to the policy versus plan, and kind of echoing what Mr. Gordon said and what everyone else was saying, for policy, I see it as like the what and like what we want to achieve, and then the plan is how and like the steps and concrete action like plans we have to get to that what and those goals. But feel free to correct me if I'm wrong with anything, but I would say like the first step is getting a resolution passed to set up a group. You're shaking your head. Do we need a resolution?
I mean, you don't need one. I mean, you technically you are that group, you know, really. I mean, you can ask the Board of Education to take that step.
If that's not necessary, and you said you want the most efficient way, so like that means we could get started basically as soon as possible setting up this group. Okay, then I'm curious to see what like anyone else thinks of how we can set this up and make sure that we're not only getting, of course, like students, but other like community members as well.
I have one more question about like whether we need, obviously we don't need a resolution to set up the group if you say we don't. But how do we ensure that the board supports what we're doing? Because I don't want to go through those several months with a group and come up with a plan and then come back and the Board of Education says, well, most of us had no idea what you were doing and we're not going to pass this because we didn't know about it and this is some pretty drastic steps.
One way is that as part of the Fiscal Management Committee, which has, since I continue to chair it, and it has a standing agenda item for the sustainability work of the system. So what we could do is have opportunities for the group to report to and present to the Fiscal Management Committee as you're moving your work forward. And potentially, depending on, and that's one way you're reporting, you're working with components of the school system, you're reporting that work forward to the board through the Fiscal Management Committee. And then potentially, depending on what you all end up recommending, the form this takes, it might also be that you would move that to the Strategic Planning Committee. If the most efficient way to create this set of action steps and incorporate them in the work of the system is to create a pillar or augment a pillar in the strategic plan. So a couple of ways to do that. And then, of course, we can also get, once it gets to a certain point, make it an agenda item at a Board of Education meeting.
Okay, I just actually remembered why we added like a resolution to our agenda, like discussing a resolution, is because, Lynn, I'm sure you've seen, people with yellow shirts testifying recently a lot, and a majority of them are part of BCC's Green New Deal Club, and and I've been frequently meeting with their president, Eliana, and they're really big on getting the board to kind of pass their version of a Green New Deal resolution, which is free to be edited or moved around however we want, at least what I understood. So the reason why I wanted to kind of talk just with the group is not only having a resolution that would, set up a group, which I know we said isn't necessarily necessary, but also outlining other, proposals, such as maybe green school certification, talking about that in the resolution, or I have to still look over the resolution that Eliana sent me, but they have a lot of not necessarily demands, but just requests and proposals that I was thinking we could, in addition to creating a group for the climate action plan, merge all into one giant sustainability resolution that we could propose and hopefully pass. That was the reason why we added that to the agenda is to talk about beginning plans for that and to gauge your opinion and other people's perspectives on that. So I'm just curious what you think about that.
And I think that, what I would suggest is if you can, do one thing. Instead of having, here's the Green New Deal, we want to do this, here's the climate action plan, we want to do this, pull everything that you together in one place. I think that is the most efficient, it's the least confusing way, and it people appreciate, having things sort of concise and everything pulled together. So if that, that is one thing to do. If you want to take a look at the climate action plan items and things that you've seen, you want to take a look at their Green New Deal things, and you don't have to, you can pull things from various pieces of work that you've identified. You can also add things that you think are relevant to this school system, because I think the most important thing when you look at things like that, when you look at what others have done, Prince George's County, look at Salt Lake City, look at the Green New Deal proposals, what you want is something that's relevant to this school system now and moving into the future. And so if you want to take all these things and pull everything into one plan, whatever you want to call it, to me that's efficiency, because everything is together and it's not we have this thing and we have that thing and we have the other thing and then everybody's like, what are we doing? And yeah.
That keeps resonating to me is that simplicity, and there's a reason that Mr. Gordon pointed out the Prince George's County, and Ms. Snyder pointed out the Prince George's County one, and there's other ones like Fairfax County, et cetera. And the way that things get really passed more frequently is when it's feasible and when it's right. And I think that a challenge within sustainability is that there's extremes ends of things, right? And that point of it being relevant is really important. And that's where I'm saying and I think that's why it worked to get that consultant in, is that the consultants know, is something feasible? You get the inputs of the different, whether it's the academic units, the facilities units, but that strategic plan that you all are talking about would have a lot of value. And it doesn't, I think you could even get this done in 8 to 10 really nice graphics, you focus on one of, each of those different policy, there's sub-bullets within it, and how do you get there? It's sort of spelled out there, and I think people have their own visions of it, but it doesn't have the detail that really gets to what's needed. And then once you develop that document, I think it will be clearer how you move it forward, but I think you're letting the end result get in the way of actually getting it done, if that makes sense.
No, I'm sorry, I got stuck in traffic and then wasn't sure how to get in the building. So I was, should I introduce myself? Okay. So I'm Joanna Snyder. I am Mr. Gordon's counterpart as co-chair for the MCCPTA, so the Montgomery County Council of PTAs, Sustainability and Green Schools Subcommittee. We're part of the Capital Improvement Programs Advocacy in MCCPTA. And we actually were created at the request of our partners within MCPS, which I think is a really nice balance, just to give that. I was thrilled to hear a little bit of Lynn's insights on the sustainability plan, because I really think in my work as a curriculum specialist, I telecommute to UC Berkeley, but I work with districts all over the country. Things work just when, like Mr. Trobman's saying, when you can start making things overlap and meet lots of needs with one action, that's really the sweet spot, both for an institution, but also for institutional cultural change. So I feel like, as you said, Peter, I think we're converging on the path here. It's a little out of my wheelhouse whether a resolution would be the next better step. I'm a little inclined, from my experience on the parent advocacy side of the district, watching the success of the digital balance resolution that came out of MCCPTA. So that was a really big parent-driven kind of post-pandemic. Schools were using a lot more technology because of that virtual hybrid and kind of shifting us back to more hands-on, which we are still doing. My perspective was having that document as kind of a piece of the real effort, kind of, and I'm curious, Lynn, your perspective, sort of gave this really articulated vision that was really agreed upon within MCCPTA to then drive forward. And I think, hopefully we're moving towards a more top clarity and transparency and leadership in the district, but my experience trying to work at the principal level, when you don't have a clear message coming from the board or from the superintendent, it's very difficult to push some of this innovation. I think we could easily, Sebastian, I feel like I could speak for us, work together on a joint SCAC, MCCPTA resolution. I feel pretty confident most of our greater subcommittee would be very excited about this effort. I think language-wise, we'd want to look at, I want to look at Salt Lake, but I've been looking a lot at Prince George's County, because they also do it, what Mr. Trobin's saying, they also break down each of their priorities by section, by short-term, long-term goals, by those. So there is elements that we can use from that model. But then I really think it's important we are using all of this in the language of the strategic plan. And so that's news to hear that the pillars might change. My impression from talking to Ms. Sharon is that those pillars might be the same, but I agree, I don't know if we need another pillar, but I think whatever those priorities are in the plan, they should each slide smoothly into one of the pillars of the strategic plan. If we could get at least one bullet under each of the three pillars, I think you're right. I think under operational excellence, hopefully we could get two. But I easily see under well-being and family engagement, the work we're talking about. The environmental literacy plan would fit very clearly under academic excellence. So I just think as we just bring all those layers together, and then also language from the existing sustainability policy. So I think that's the next play. So it's almost like it's task force to do it, but I think a resolution could be really helpful, both as something you bring to the new superintendent, to the new board. I think getting the board to sign on or push them to say, are you behind the students with this? But yeah, it will have to kind of, some of the groups might need to feel a little disappointed in diluting, or not diluting, but stepping back some of the targets for a resolution like that.
Yeah, I completely agree. And what I'm hearing a lot of is finding the overlaps, having simplicity, and Quinley and Megan just drafted up a quick 5-step plan for what we could do to initiate this, and it wouldn't require a resolution. What would happen is we would create this work group of community members and stakeholders, including students, and then we would begin drafting the plan and having we could have progress checks with the BOE strategic committee or fiscal management committee, and then we could once we have a draft of the plan, we could open it for public comment, and then once public comment's over, having final edits and changes, and then eventually proposing it to the board for final passage. How does that?
And I'll just add, I would not let the council be off the hook, the county council. I'd pull them in because they're the ones that are going to have to fund it. So I would say, with the climate action plan that the council has, thinking about those targets and pushing them, are you going to help fund some of these new things in the district? Or existing things, to Harris's point.
This is a question I have really quick. Does the Montgomery County Council have like a comprehensive climate change plan or just a policy they do? Okay, so we would also want to look at that and work off of that as well.
Yeah.
Okay.
So about that, in I think it was 2020 or 2021, Montgomery County passed a climate action plan that does have, I can't remember, they do have stuff for MCPS within that climate action plan. So that would be something else you want to tie into it.
So going back to the plan, any feedback or input on that?
I have one thing to say. I think it sounds great. I think it also might make sense to see if we can talk to some people from PG County or Salt Lake to ask them, or maybe invite them to a meeting of the committee or the work group to get their perspective and opinions as well. And then I was wondering, would this also include, again, I think having a consultant might be a good idea. So how would that kind of fit into all that? Would
the consultant?
Yeah.
I think the consultant would just help us write the plan, as far as I've heard. Yeah. Okay.
And what we could potentially do is that you can form, if all of you want to be involved in the meeting, or if you want to have the policy committee be involved in it, I can put you in touch with the co-chair of the PG County who wrote the plan, and you can talk to him and ask him all these questions and see, he will be able to give you a lot more guidance about how to go about creating it. I mean, the nice thing is that they've done a lot of the work for us at Prince George's County, that we have their kind of blueprint and we can kind of go from that. So like Ms. Truman was saying, we might be able to do this in a faster timeline than they were able to do it. But yeah, so that's kind of what I would recommend.
Okay, that sounds great. Oh, are you ready? Okay, sorry.
I wanted to add, based on the Prince George's plan as well, to take a look at who participated in that. Some things may be understood that haven't been said yet, but I'm hearing about students and parents the most, and that's great. But they had county council members, they had school system employees, they had just all kinds of community partners and other organizations. So it's great you all are initiating it and have the energy, but just keep in mind to expand your scope of who might be involved. That can add expertise, and yeah, that's it.
No, I agree. Every part of the community should be in this group: students, parents, board members, county council members. Yeah.
Okay, well, it sounds like our first step should be having a meeting with as many people as we can find that have experience with this type of thing. So people from Prince George's County, people from Salt Lake City, although maybe, wait, that's really far away. So maybe they would join virtually. But, having people who are experts in this and people who worked on the Prince George's County one, as well as, experts and whoever else might be interested, just so that we can figure out how best to create our group and who we want to include in the group, so that we can get started, I guess.
And yeah, I was just gonna say, once we, do our research with Prince George's County and Salt Lake City, the first step would be to create our work group with community members and then find our consultant. So, and then we can also draft out a more specific plan for everything. But yeah. Anything
Okay.
else?
Do our guests have any final comments?
You guys are awesome.
Thank you. Okay, great. Thank you both so much, and we look forward to working with you. Okay, we're going to call a recess now, so we will be back at about 7:15. Okay, so with that, we are ready to end our recess and continue with the meeting. I'm watching the video. Nothing's happening.
There's usually a lag.
There's usually, okay. All right. Should I start? Okay. Okay, we're going to start with our committee updates now. So we'll start with policy. So I think, oh, we're not on the air. Okay. Okay, thank you. Okay. Yeah.
I don't think we're gonna go that route, but we would love your help.
Okay, we are going to continue with our committee updates now, starting with policy. So as I am one of the leaders of policy, I will say I think the only update we have right now is that our artificial turf report will be released by the end of the school year. So within the next, June 4th, by our next meeting, June 4th.
It's been a journey.
Yes, we're very excited about that. So then our next update, our next committee would be communications. So can our communications leaders give us an update?
Yeah, I can give comms update. Well, we don't really have anything big planned. We just posted a TikTok if you guys want to go watch that. But there's nothing huge coming up with comms, and actually I know that's next up in the discussion, but we hope to talk more about what role comms would play next year for the SCAC, because it seems we definitely hold like a big responsibility of running the Instagram and the TikTok and like the social media, but what other roles could we take on to alleviate some of the other committees from their tasks so that we can be of like bigger assistance for everybody? And I know that's later in the discussion, which
Well, I think that's now, because
Okay.
the later discussion is about the ambassador comms
Sure.
specifically. So go on.
Wait, I
ahead, yeah.
just wanted to answer your
Yeah.
question. Do you know what we're doing with the website?
the website is Celestia. That is not Walter and I. So if she can give an update, that'd be
Like,
great.
what are we? I know we have two. There's one on Wix, one on MCPS.
So yeah, our website on MCPS is up already, I'm pretty sure. But the one on Wix that was made by Faith and some other ambassadors, I'm pretty sure is finalized. So we just need to like
What-
find a way to get that a domain and stuff.
Yeah, what I was thinking is let's have the one on MCPS be non-changeable, if that makes sense, where it would have just general overview information, what the SCAC is. Maybe should it change once a year with the council members? But I think it could, but to make it easier, we can just have this like MCPS website that would also link to our website that we have complete control over, where we don't need to learn all the code and stuff or the programming with the MCPS website. So just something simple like that, that can still, where we are still present on the MCPS website, but also links to other resources.
Yeah, that's a great point. Is that something that comms could like take on? Like for next year? Like
Sorry?
like hyperlinking like like a individual SCAC website on
yeah,
the
definitely.
MCPS page.
And then keeping that up, I think that would be
Yeah.
the main thing. Yeah, Nikita?
One thing I would want to say is I think having something that's like the URL at wixsite.com is, it's not like the most professional. So as we were talking about the budget earlier, if we could purchase a domain as part of that, that might be something we could look into. Sometimes it is expensive, but if we do want to have that separate website, having like something that like was like MCPS-StudentClimateActionCouncil.com would be beneficial. We can still use Wix to make it, but then have a custom domain.
And we hopefully will have that money as well. Like we talked with her about like having a budget, and she mentioned how we can definitely next year find ways to spend more of our money, and one way we can do that is through a domain and a Wix account and premium.
Okay, the other thing that comms I think can take on next year that your side of comms didn't really take this on. I was doing the monthly videos, and then I reached out I filled out the form to make another one, and I didn't receive a response, and unfortunately, I did not get around to following up or making sure that we could have another video, because also, like, our videos haven't been pushed out as much as I would have liked, but that's besides the point. So next year, I think if comms can take that on, instead of just like me coordinating that, I think that would be better. And I don't know if you want to do monthly or bi-monthly or however it may turn out. I think that would be a good idea. This also leads me to one other thing that I think was a question for Ms. Dublinsky, but I'll say it anyway. Relating to comms, can we plan a memo for the beginning of next year to have a video, an introductory video for the SCAC be shown to all the schools? Because we tried to advocate for that for this year, and it didn't end up happening. And I think that would be really beneficial. You know, we can have a video, it can have some of the same things, but obviously different introductions, and then explain to schools who we are, because unfortunately at this point I think a lot of MCPS students have never heard of the SCAC, and I will say it's a pain to have to explain the acronym every time because it's a mouthful, but we want all of our students to be involved in what we're doing. So Lynn, could we get a memo out at the beginning of next year? Okay. Okay, awesome. Then I think that should be a priority for comms, to make sure that can go out at the beginning of next year.
Right, and then just to go over some of the things that we've done since the last meeting. So we finished the Loiterman project, which was very successful. There were over 1,000 students who attended and signed up to go. And then additionally, we finished our collaboration with the Anacostia Watershed Group.
Okay, and then I did just want to loop back to homeroom slides, because it seems this is a reoccurring theme that a lot of things in comms always goes back to our original idea of sending out the homeroom slides. But it seems that the homeroom slides are not really an effective way. Even with the memo, it's not effective.
Well, I don't know how we can say that because we haven't had a memo yet.
No, I know. But
Okay.
I think we should try to start developing new strategies, because if we're continuously thinking about, homeroom slides aren't working, then why don't we just come up with a new idea? I don't think we should continue wasting time on something that hasn't been working for the past few months.
I think something, I'll finish my thought really quickly and then you can speak. But I think something maybe we could do then is have one homeroom slide where we have the memo, and that has all the information about the SCAC, and then the other updates are contained within videos or other strategies. But I think maybe having one slideshow at the beginning of the year for everyone to see, pending the creation of the memo, would be a good idea.
Is this working? One thing y'all might want to think about for next year, or the next year's group of Student Climate Action Council members, is making sure you have a very direct connection to the student leadership in each high school. And, if there's an SGA or whatever they call it, different schools do it a different way. And then you want to make sure that you have a way to get your message out that can be tailored to, so, when I was a BCC student, they had their, I can't remember what they call it, but like their BCC minutes, and they show it I think it's every Friday. And, everybody watches it because it's created by students for students, and they have some, kind of wacky thing where they have a guest from the school community there, and they eat chicken wings and see who can eat the hottest hot sauce, and everybody, so they have these sort of running things that happen, but it's also a news segment and updates about the school, but it is something, but that's what they do at BCC. I don't know what they do at Wheaton. I don't know what they do at Magruder. And so making sure you have like a mini toolkit, so whatever resonates and is the thing that students use and expect at each given school is something you can share. And the people that are going to be able to tell you what that is, you guys are in your schools, so you know your schools, but the people that are in, you need connections with the students in the other schools that can give you really sound advice about the best way to maximize your reach. And so I would say, instead of deciding in advance, this is how we're going to do it, making sure you have a couple of different options that you can offer through your connections in each school that maximizes, that can be used through whatever channels are most effective at that school.
Okay, really quickly. So I definitely agree with that. The issue is that we tried to do that last time, to reach out to individual schools and principals, and we did not, almost every time we didn't hear back. So, okay, go through the students. So we don't have connections at every single one of our 200 schools, unfortunately. So we can find them.
Wait.
Right. That's true.
I see a lot of people's fingers on mics, so we can let's just go down the row. That's all right.
Okay. Thank you, Peter. So I was just thinking, first of all, I completely agree with Ms. Harris's idea of, I think, or like the morning shows, I guess most schools have those. And I think it's not just high school. High schools have the full segments, I'm pretty sure. And then most middle schools have segments, and some just have the announcements, which work as well. And if we want to go that far, elementary schools have the morning talks as well. And I think as for finding connections within those schools, for our own schools, we could obviously find physical. We could just go to whatever teacher, whatever student leads that segment. And then for schools that we don't have any connection whatsoever, even maybe MCR, we don't have connections through MCR and those schools, we could email the teacher, because I'm pretty sure every segment has that one teacher sponsor. And most of the time they do respond because, for example, emailing the principal is a lot more difficult because they have a lot more stuff to do compared to as if we go directly to the source, then there's not going to be as much traffic when we communicate with them. So I think emailing directly to the teacher that sponsors the segment would be better.
Yeah, I definitely agree with Raj. And just to add back on the comms area, I think it'd be a great idea for us to take on the morning announcements and other memo videos. And just to add one more thing, on the homeroom slides and connecting in person with schools and having more deep connections, I would say that it is definitely possible to connect to each school. While it would probably be hard, I think the easiest way to do that would be to get ambassadors who have connections at that school to reach out, which I know we did try, but in this instance, I guess I could look back to, I think a couple weeks ago when I, with some other friends for a school project, we went to, I think, Barnsley Elementary School, and we went and we did a recycling homeroom slide thing just to teach the kids about that. And I think the easiest way that we did that was just having one of our members like reach out to her, like a teacher that she was well connected with, and it wasn't really hard to get that set up.
Yeah, and I agree with all comments about going to principals isn't the right way to go. We need to go through students and find the teachers who run morning announcements or those types of programs at the schools. Going to homeroom slides, we've had many discussions about whether we should keep homeroom slides. We've done votes. Should we just do it for elementary school and not for secondary schools? And here's how I kind of view it. I view our videos, our monthly videos, which unfortunately have stopped, I believe, but we can definitely pick it back up next year, and then homeroom slides as the same, because they're both relaying out the same information. It's just that videos are a more flashy way to do it. And personally, I favor videos and think we should stop doing homeroom slides, but of course it's the council's decision. Just because when I'm in advisory periods, students aren't paying attention to the homeroom slides, they're on their phones. Whereas with a video, I feel like we can get more engagement and participation that way. But I'm curious to see what other people think.
I definitely agree with that. I think we can get rid of the slides. The issue that we were discussing before was that the elementary schoolers would definitely have they're a very different audience, and so we might need a separate video for elementary schoolers, depending on what we're talking about. So we would have to do 2 videos whenever we made a video, instead of just having a slideshow for the elementary schoolers, which is fine, and I still think a video is more engaging, even for that age group. We just have to make sure that we can tailor it specifically to them.
I think making 2 videos might be a little too much effort. And I know videos are a great way to visualize for little kids. So maybe we should focus more on the younger generation, because they're the ones who will be passing it on. The older ones, we can figure out a different way. Homeroom slides are obviously not engaging, but will videos be just as engaging? Because I also see a lot of kids on their phones during the morning news. We have it's videotaped in the morning, every morning. So is that really the best way to go for older kids? Because obviously younger kids, we've seen maintaining a state of watching something is just a little more engaging for them. But for the older kids, do we all actually enjoy watching those videos? I'm curious because I know sometimes they can be boring too. So I think we should expand our perspectives on everything.
So I actually have a couple of things to say. So I definitely agree with with what Peter said about videos kind of being more engaging, at least than slides. But I also kind of agree that they're not the most, I guess, efficient or effective way to get our name out. And I feel like in terms of actually spreading awareness about the Student Climate Action Council, I feel like one effective way was really just attending a lot of these student advocacy events. For example, the Youth Climate Summit and the YCC. I kind of forgot what that stands for, but I really think that just branching out to where a lot of student advocates are, we can really get our name spread in at least student advocacy. And then also another thing about spreading our name in student advocacy, we should definitely do some things in joint with MCR or MCJC. I feel like maybe for the first exec board for MCR next year, we get asked to have a spot to speak or do something like that.
I actually totally agree with Walter. And on the same vein, I think next year we should make it a priority at the beginning of the year to have contact information for as many people as we can from as many schools as we can. And I think this year we did a pretty okay job of it. I think we got all the ambassadors to find as many people as they could. I think next year what we can do is we can also reach out to organizations like MCR. We all have Instagram, and we can find out who's the president of green teams from a lot of schools through that. And I think making a very comprehensive contact list for that, so whenever we need anything or want to reach out to any specific school, we have, this is the recycling coordinator, this is the green team president, this is the SGA president, and so on and so forth.
Oh, sorry, just to add on to that, I know we also have contacts with Nature Forward, who helps run the Power program, and there they help younger kids actually learn more about climate change through library visits during the summer, and I think that would actually be a great endeavor to embark on with them. Just a partnership, I think, would be great. Yes, Mr. Derby.
Speaking of the summer and MCR, they have, I believe, a 2 to 3 day kind of retreat planning meeting during the summer. So rather than waiting until next year, I think you might want to talk to Ms. Cherry about maybe getting on the agenda for that summer meeting. So that way they have the information before school starts and can build it into whatever their back to school plans are.
So going back to the comments regarding like videos not being the most engaging, and I completely agree we should definitely work with YCC, MCR, all those groups. But the reason why we, started homeroom slides and videos and sending them out to schools is because that is how we can ensure that we are reaching out to every student and every classroom. So that is why we're doing those. And I get it, like it might not be the most engaging, but at least we are reaching out to every single student. And for those who aren't paying attention, they aren't paying attention, but those who see it and are interested, we are, grabbing the attention of our intended audience. So I think we should keep videos, but I just wanted to get like confirmation. Is the general consensus we should stop doing homeroom slides?
Yeah.
That's the general consensus.
Yes, I think
Okay.
so. Okay, unfortunately, Walter, we really do have to move on. So we are running out of time here. Is there anything else? Last urgent comments? No? Okay, perfect. We can obviously continue this discussion over email or through Slack or however we need to. So the next, just really quickly, I wanted to point out here, I've created a document for end of year recommendations because I know that many of us will not be returning in the fall, and I want to make sure that our ideas can be shared with the next year. So just for example, I was talking to Peter and he suggested that we make this resolution, right? Or, ideas for how different committees can structure things or new ideas for the committees to pursue. So like the discussion we just had would be a great thing to include in there. I just think it would be good that we can have some continuity and that the ideas of those who are leaving and the reflections of those who are leaving can benefit those who are coming in. So I'm going to ask you all to fill that out before our next meeting so that we can review it and discuss it at the last meeting that we have. That's in 2 weeks. And obviously I'll send an email out about this as well because there were several people who couldn't make it tonight. But with that, we're going to move on to a discussion about our ambassador program. So Quinley.
Yeah, so today at our ambassador meeting prior to this one, everybody filled out a survey kind of debriefing their experience as an SCAC ambassador over the year. So we didn't get that many responses just to the turnout today. But we can also open it up to everybody's general thoughts about how the program went. And what can we do to improve it, and those types of changes we want to make for next year. So does anyone want to speak to that first?
Yeah, so first off, I think it was Megan and Faith who came up with this. If I'm not wrong, if I am wrong, please correct me. But having the in-person and then virtual work sessions, I think actually has worked really well. I think at the beginning of the year, we were not seeing a lot of engagement, but having the in-person and virtual work sessions in addition to attendance, I think was really important. I think some things that we could improve on for next year is, I know we were having a discussion about this at the recess about having more deeper area engagement, and that could translate into our climate ambassador program as well. I think the intention was for people to also meet with their area council members for area specific projects, and I think we do not need to have we don't necessarily have to have an in-person meeting for that. It can be virtual or however the area chooses with their council members, but I think that should definitely be something that we work on next year. Like, for example, an area project would be working with a local elementary school to, to have a composting program or something like that, I think would be very beneficial. And then also I think maybe we can consider also having separate committee meetings if necessary. Like for like the policy committee, if there was an extra thing that we wanted to work on, having those separate meetings outside of the work sessions as well.
So I would definitely agree with you, Nikita, about how I guess doing the in-person and the virtual work sessions is very beneficial, and it has really bolstered the amount of engagement that we have had. But I would also still say that the engagement could be still like a lot higher. Like it's not the highest that it could be. And I think that this is also something we discussed during the recess, but I think that one way that we could really tackle down on this problem is by enforcing the attendance policy a lot more. We talk about like an attendance policy in our bylaws, but that has not been, I guess, enacted yet in this year. So I think that moving on to the next year, that's really something that we should tackle.
Yeah, I think that's a great point, especially, both of your points together, because I'm looking at some of the feedback that we got in the survey, and some of it was overall, I liked the work that we were doing, but sometimes there just wasn't enough there. Like some folks said that they wanted more to do, especially like area projects. I think, just speaking from policy, we did a lot of reports and testimony-based things. So I think a lot of people want more active project type things. So yeah, does anyone else have ideas in that lens?
I think one way that we can increase engagement is definitely trying to do more outreach so that we can get more climate ambassadors who do care about the work that we're doing. So we should have school visits next year. I think that's one thing we should really prioritize so that we can reach our intended audience and make sure that all of the students who want to join us are able to do so. Sort of on the flip side of that, I think we need to be a little bit more strict in reviewing our climate ambassador applications, because I know that last year we basically said, okay, everyone who fills out the application is going to become a climate ambassador. But we ended up with 200 people in the Slack and 10 people who were actually engaging with us. And so I think that is definitely ineffective. So if we set the standard in the application and say, please write this essay that's, we have this range of words and you can't write less than this much, then we might, I don't want to say filter out, but, we might push away the people who aren't as interested in the work that we're doing. So I think that's something that we should definitely consider. And then one more thing I want to add, I think we should open our applications in the summer so that we can start engaging our ambassadors right away as the year begins.
Okay, and I know we were thinking of having a form of continued interest for ambassadors, and I think that's a great idea altogether, but we should also filter out those people who filled out the form that are still interested but have not really done much work this year. I think we should also take that into account when re-accepting those ambassadors, not to makes our scope smaller or anything, but I think we should definitely take into account the work and the quality of the work that specific ambassador has done with us this year. Just a thought, though.
I want to pose a question to Megan. I think you brought this up. So in terms of filtering out applications, do we want to have significantly fewer climate ambassadors than we used to have, or have a more rigorous selection process, or how do we want it to work? Because I think last year the intention was let's accept everybody we can, but how exactly do we want to improve it for next year, and what do we what do you envision the program looking like?
I'll just say really quickly, I don't think that we should be very, very rigorous, because then we'd be filtering out people that would actually want to, to work and to help us. I think what we should do is have, like I was saying, a word range so that they know that they need to write at least this much for the application, just so that we can give them an idea of, you have to have some certain commitment to us in order to become a climate ambassador. Go on.
Thoughts. I would say, first of all, if you have folks that haven't been really participating, if you reached out to ask why. because, you want to have that two-way communication. And I would caution you as you're sitting there talking about, we want this rigorous application and, these big essays and things like that. First of all, what are you offering in return? You ask these people to fill out these applications. What are you giving them back? And I would suggest, instead of saying, you got to fill out this application and, write these essays in this many words, just ask people to give you 2 good ideas of things that they want to do. And it doesn't matter how many words they write. You want to see that they're thinking and they have good ideas that they, maybe they are overly ambitious, but, maybe they're not. But I think that, to me, that would be more, that would tell you a lot more. If you simply ask the question, tell us 2 things that you would really like, 2 good ideas that you have for projects hyper-local to system-wide. And let's see what they tell you. That's what I would suggest.
So just one last thing before we move on, because I feel like we're running a little bit low on time. I feel like in terms of the ambassador selection process, I don't think we should have like a word minimum or anything, but I feel like we should at least like make sure that the people who are applying are at least writing in full sentences and like stuff like that, because I know that in the last year there was not that many issues with that, but a couple of applications were just like literally just like one word, and somehow they still got accepted to being an ambassador. And also in terms of what Cindy said about the ambassadors from this year who haven't really done much, I feel like, in my personal opinion, this year overall, it's our first year. There's obviously been some problems and some disorganization, and I don't think that should be taken like way too much into account in re-accepting ambassadors.
And then, I just had one thing. I do agree with your point, Lynn. It's just that, like, also this year we did see some vague ideas. It was like pick up trash and like stuff like that. It wasn't that, I guess, specific. And I think while we don't expect like 4-paragraph essays, we do want, I think, would like, just to kind of get specific, would a 100-word minimum be like what we're expecting for a minimum? Just because I think if we want to hear like creative ideas, I think that should be fine.
I like that idea. I do think, though, I agree, though, that the idea of having a minimum can sometimes defeat the point, where you get people who are trying to meet the minimum rather than just putting a simple, straightforward, good idea. But going back to Walter and Cindy's point, I think something we could do, depending on everybody's idea, is maybe doing like a, return offer for current ambassadors who we know that are engaged and attended, and maybe we also give second chances to some that maybe had partial engagement, were at some meetings but maybe not all of them, that type of thing. So
I agree. I definitely think I agree with Peter. I don't think 100-word minimum would in any way make people like strive to meet the minimum or have any difficulty meeting the minimum. If you have 2 good ideas, 50 words per idea is not going to be difficult or a stretch at all. So I think I definitely agree, because we don't want to see those vague ideas. But I think that should help, and as long as we get that application open over the summer and we start broadcasting it pretty well, I think that we should be able to get a lot of climate ambassadors. I think we're going to have to move on pretty soon, but
One last comment, a spreadsheet that just has all of our ambassadors, because I know there were some change-ups at the beginning of the year. We had a spreadsheet of every single person who applied and got accepted, but of course some people, I guess, weren't active, and then we had to do this whole redesign where we opened up a new form. It was just like a spreadsheet that gets frequently updated that shows our current ambassadors would be very helpful, and also has attendance.
okay, yeah, I think that's definitely a good idea. And I think we should consider that for next year. So,
Also have something to add?
Yeah.
I don't know, sorry, it's from Zoom. It's Mia, hi.
hi.
Hi. I just had something to add. It's a little bit less about climate ambassadors and a little bit more about our program just in general, especially for next year. I think that as we like encourage ambassadors to have their own projects, I think the SCAC should take on a project themselves. Like I don't know exactly like what that would be. Like obviously we would brainstorm ideas and like especially with the new council members talk about exactly like what our main goals are that are a little bit away from like policy making. I think there should be some type of project that could go into like a school or a cluster of schools or something like that that kind of shows kind of a more tangible goal that we reach throughout the year so it can be um I guess yeah, so it's like a more tangible goal that everyone can see and everyone can like kind of be a part of. But yeah.
All right, thank you so much, Mia, because I think that's a great point. You know, kind of, we had some, you know, some early ideas about like maybe having a big like SCAC sponsored event. You know, maybe something like that. But yeah, I think that like a project is definitely something that we could pursue. We do have to move on though. So next we have a motion on the table to combine our Ambassador Operations and Outreach Committee and our Communications Committee into one General Outreach Committee. So this would basically mean, you know, kind of the outreach to different schools and the communications like our social media would kind of form as to one. So if anyone has any thoughts on that, we can go ahead and do that and then we can take a vote.
And I'll just quickly mention that this would only be for ambassadors. This is not for the council committees.
So I would say that I'm actually in agreement with this because I feel like in the past year, a lot of the time, me and Cindy as like the comms directors, we have taken on roles of, I guess, like some parts of outreach because we did do that collaboration with MCPS with the Loiterman project and the Anacostia watershed. In like my personal experience, I don't necessarily think that that's something that I guess a traditional comms committee would do. So I feel like combining it would be beneficial because I mean we're kind of already doing the duties of each other, I guess.
And then I also wanted to add that I agree as well because I think we see a pattern every ambassador meeting that we're just kind of doing the same thing, and that's brainstorming ideas on how to engage more students. Like I've noticed that's definitely a repetitive quote that we've heard a lot in comms. So I think combining the two would be very beneficial. I also think leaving comms as maybe a branch off of operations and outreach, specifically in the use of for social media and just social media would be also something to keep. I wouldn't necessarily get rid of comms, but I would keep it more low-key and kind of smaller.
Yeah, and
maybe more conservative.
Yeah, and we tested this out today. Like we literally kind of did a pilot, if you want to call it that, where we combined operations and outreach and operations with communications, and it went well. So I would also be in favor of this motion.
Okay, so unfortunately we're kind of rushing through this because we're very close to the end of our meeting time. So I'm just going to call for a vote, I guess, and then we can let the other council members know. There are 8 of us here, so if it passes unanimously, then we have passed the motion. If not, we can ask the people on Zoom for their input. So who, all in favor of the motion? Okay, that's unanimous. We have passed this motion, and we are combining the committees for next year. And with that, I guess we're moving to our closing. Oh, yes.
It is a little problematic that you are binding a body that doesn't yet exist to rules that you want them to follow, and maybe they have their own. So just putting that out there.
That's a good point. So I guess instead of, okay, that's a very good point. So it could be, because this is for next year, and this is our council. So we can merge the committees tentatively, and if they would like to change that, of course, they can pass their own motion and change it. But as we are a council right now, that's how our committees will be for the rest of the year, what little of the year we have left.
Yeah, I agree. I think this would be something added to our current bylaws, and if the next year's council chooses to chooses to change that, they are more than free to do that.
Okay, so I think that's all for that. I guess we need chairs. Oh, is there one last comment? For our next meeting.
Oh, I was just gonna say, because I see on the agenda we have end of year like meeting celebration planning. I was wondering if we could table that to maybe a virtual Zoom meeting.
Yeah, so I think that would be more like with the chairs, what they
Okay.
decide. So
Got it.
is there anyone that wants to volunteer to be the chair or one of two chairs for our next meeting?
Have we all been chairs?
I think we've all been chairs. Is anyone volunteering?
Okay.
Yes? You too?
Yeah.
Okay, great. Peter and Raj, thank you so much.
Okay.
And I think our next meeting will be something of a celebration, but it's up to you too, obviously. Yeah. Yeah, okay. Is there any last comments that we have?
Oh, yeah, one other thing for Peter and Raj as the next chairs. We were supposed to have representatives from the MCPS Department of Transportation join us tonight. Unfortunately, they were unable to, but they did offer to join us at another point in time. So if you would like to invite them to our next meeting on the 4th, I'd be more than happy to connect you guys so we can have a discussion with them on clean buses.
And alternately, if we decide to leave it as a celebration, we can connect them with our new council members to do that in the fall as a sort of jumping off point.
One quick question, just so I have a better vision of the meeting. Is it going to, we have a scheduled live stream, I believe, for that day.
Oh, that's
So will the celebration just be the Climate Ambassadors meeting from 5 to 6, and then we wrap up the year with the meeting from 6 to 8?
Yes.
Okay, sounds good.
Okay, that's it. Thank you all so much for coming.